Judges Corner is brought to you by CoolStuffInc.com and gatheringmagic.com. Support our show by visiting both websites. Now it's time for Judges Corner with David Green.
Hey everyone, David Green here from Judges Corner. Today we're going to be taking a look at the mechanics of Khans of Tarkir, the next set in the Magic the Gathering expansion. Khans of Tarkir are similar to Shards of Alara in the sense that it's a tricolored faction set, but instead of the shards, we're taking a look at the wedges, or the other color combinations that weren't shown in Shards of Alara. So first, let's take a look at the clans and their color combinations. So first, there's the Abzan, the white, black, and green clan with the Outlast mechanic. The Jeskai, the blue, red, and white clan with the Prowess mechanic. The Sultai, the black, green, and blue clan with the Delve mechanic. The Mardu, the red, white, and black clan with the Raid mechanic. And the Temur, the green, blue, and red clan with the Ferocious mechanic. The Abzan clan have the mechanic Outlast, an activated ability that puts a +1/+1 counter on the activating creature by paying the associated cost and tapping it. The ability can only be activated when you could normally play a sorcery, so only during your turn in the main phase when the stack is empty. Playing Quicken will not let you quickly outlast your creatures on your opponent's turn. You also cannot outlast on the same turn that you play the creature with the ability because of summoning sickness, unless it has or gains haste. The ability is more than just +1/+1 counters though, as most Abzan will grant a special power-up based on those +1/+1 counters. The Jeskai clan has a triggered ability called Prowess. It triggers whenever you cast a non-creature spell, and gives the creatures with Prowess +1/+1 until end of turn. This means any non-creature spell will pump up those Jeskai warriors. This includes artifacts, enchantments, planeswalkers, sorceries, and instants. Gods, however, will not trigger Prowess because they're always creatures on the stack. And lands are never spells, so they too will not trigger Prowess. You can also get multiple instances of +1/+1 off of multiple spells. So 3 instants would give a Jeskai creature +3/+3. And 3 other non-creature spells could give 2 or more Jeskai creatures +3/+3 each. Suddenly, all of your instants are combat tricks, and unlike normal combat tricks, countering the non-creature spell that triggered Prowess will not stop the Prowess trigger from resolving. So, your Jeskai creature will still get the +1/+1 boost, because once it is cast, it triggers, even if that non-creature spell would end up being countered. The Sultai ability, Delve, is the return of an originally previewed mechanic from Future Sight. Delve functions similarly to Convoke, except instead of tapping creatures to help pay for the spell, you exile cards from your graveyard. Another difference from Convoke is that the exiled cards only pay for the colorless cost in the spell. So, you'll need to at least pay the colored mana with lands or anything else that makes mana. You also can't exile more than the number you're using to help pay for the cost of the spell. And any countered Delve spells will not return the exiled cards. Similarly to if you had a spell countered, how you wouldn't get a refund on the mana used to pay for that spell. And the converted mana cost of a Delve spell never changes either, regardless of the number of cards exiled. The Mardu mechanic is Raid, an ability word that triggers when you cast a spell with Raid after attacking with a creature this turn. The creature that is attacking didn't have to deal damage, or even survive combat. It doesn't even matter if they're attacking a player or a planeswalker, just so long as something successfully attacked. When you play something with Raid after attacking, you'll get their triggered ability when it resolves. And passing your attack step without a single creature attacking won't trigger Raid. So remember, a creature you control has to be considered attacking the turn you play a spell with Raid for Raid to trigger. Finally, the Temur clan has Ferocious, another ability word. It's important to know that Ferocious triggers are intervening if clauses that check to see if you control a creature with power 4 or greater when they would trigger, and again when they would resolve. So, if you attack with an Heir of the Wilds and control no other creatures, but want to surprise your opponent by playing an Advent of the Worm when the Ferocious ability would trigger, it actually does not, because there was no creature with power 4 or greater in play, so Ferocious actually never triggered. So let's step back. What if you did have a creature with power 4 or greater, like an Ancient Silverback, in play when Heir of the Wilds attacks? Well, the Ferocious ability triggers. But then, what if your opponent goes to ulcerate your Ancient Silverback in response to that Ferocious trigger? Well, when Ferocious goes to resolve, it checks to see if there's a creature with power 4 or greater in play. But since Ancient Silverback is now a 3/2 because of ulcerate, Ferocious doesn't resolve, and the trigger is removed from the stack. But you also have that Advent of the Worm that we talked about earlier. So, when your opponent goes to ulcerate targeting your Ancient Silverback, you can respond by casting Advent of the Worm, placing a 5/5 creature into play. Even though your Ancient Silverback is no longer power 4 or greater, you still have at least one creature with power 4 or greater in play because of the worm. So, the trigger will then be able to resolve. Like the Mardu Raid ability, each result is different, so make sure to read them carefully. Also, an instant or sorcery spell with Ferocious will only check for a creature with power 4 or greater upon resolution, unlike the triggers. The final mechanic to go over is Morph, which is also returning as a mechanic for all the clans. Cards with Morph can be cast face down by paying 3 generic mana, and they'll resolve as nameless, typeless creatures with 2 power and 2 toughness, no other abilities, and no converted mana cost. You can then pay and flip over a Morph card at any time you have priority to surprise your opponent and possibly get a cool effect from it too. Morphing a card face up is a special action that does not use the stack. So you and your opponents cannot respond to a card being morphed face up even if you really wanted to. While they're face down, they're just like any other creature and can be affected by anything that would affect regular old generic 2/2 creatures. You can peek at the morph cards you control at any time, but your opponents cannot, unless something lets them. Morph is also a status, just like being tapped or untapped. And things that are tapped, when they untap, don't lose any auras or enchantments attached to them. The same is true for Morph. When you flip over a face-down Morph creature, you keep any auras or enchantments or +1/+1 counters on it, because all that's changing is its status. It's important to know that you can't shuffle up or switch your Morph creatures around on the battlefield. Sure, they normally can't tell what you put face down anyways, but if they could, and then later couldn't, but still could remember what they were, you can't randomize them to throw your opponent off. Finally, you must reveal any Morph cards to verify they were indeed Morph cards before they leave the battlefield. It doesn't matter if they're going to a public zone like the graveyard or a private zone like your hand. It doesn't even matter if the game is over and you won or lost. You always reveal Morph cards to your opponent to verify the legitimacy. Failure to do so might result in a severe penalty in some tournaments. So that's it for our episode. Stay tuned because we're obviously going to be talking a lot more about Morph in a future episode, and we may cover more stuff for Khans of Tarkir. And if you have any questions about this episode, past episodes, or just any questions in general, you can always send us an email at judgescorner@gatheringmagic.com. And until next time, make sure to shuffle thoroughly, play at a reasonable pace, and Con!